Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Drux Milan Unboxing. I'm sitting here in an icy cold Stellenbosch. Just had to take a hot shower to warm up. But the boxing will warm us up on Saturday night at least, because we've got a fight that I'm sure will be a crowd pleaser. It can't help but be a fan-friendly fight between two come forward guys that are big punchers, both in their own right. And I'm talking about the big light heavyweight unification bout where WBC and IBF world champion Artur Beterbiev, a Canadian-based Russian, will put his undefeated record and his belts on the line against the WBO champion, who is no ordinary Joe Smith Jr., of course, who brings that WBO belt to the table. And it was all happening in the iconic Madison Square Garden, New York. I'm sure Joe Smith is from Long Island. I'm sure he'll have a crowd support behind him. He'll have a lot of fans there in the stand. And Artur Beterbiev has got the better pedigree. He's got that background from a Russian amateur system, and he will definitely be the favorite. If I look at all the predictions online and the polls, there's not a lot of people going for Joe Smith Jr., but I do think Joe Smith is a live underdog in the fight because he's a guy that can punch, and he's not going to battle to find Beterbiev, I think. Because Artur Beterbiev is a guy that is a steady pressure fighter that comes forward. He's 17-0, won all 17 fights by way of knockout. He breaks you down gradually in the body to the head until you cave in, and eventually he gets that knockout. But he does get hit, like we saw in his last fight against Marcus Brown. The speed and the movement of Marcus Brown gave him a little bit of trouble here and there, although he was mostly in control of the fight. And I think that is a thing that Artur Beterbiev sometimes battle a little bit, slick, fast boxes. And that is exactly the same thing that Joe Smith Jr. battles with. Joe Smith, 28 wins, 3 losses, 22 knockouts. He's got a height and a reach advantage over Beterbiev going into Saturday's bout, so he's got that going for him. But when he's lost, it was an early loss in his career, and then he lost to Sullivan Barrera. I believe he broke his jaw during that fight, so, you know, that is a mitigating circumstance. And Dmitry Bivol, Candelo's recent conqueror, just outboxing. But even there, he managed to hurt Bivol when he caught him just on the bell at one stage. So Joe Smith Jr. struggles against these slick boxers. You know, Jesse Hart, it was a split decision, and he struggles against those guys. He had a very good win over Elider Alvarez, the former WBO champion, who beat Sergey Kovalev. He knocked him out, and he won the WBO championship with a tight decision over Maxim Vlasov that the Russian wasn't very happy about. It was one of those close fights, depends what you are looking at. But Vlasov as well, with movement, speed and angles, he gave Joe Smith Jr. trouble. Now, Beterbiev is not going to present that kind of trouble to Joe Smith. So stylistically, at least, I think for each guy suits the other guy's style. Beterbiev doesn't like a guy that runs, neither does Joe Smith. George Foreman famously says you never go forward against a puncher, but I don't think these guys have that option. They're not the kind of guys who can really box on the back foot. Beterbiev maybe a little bit, but they'll be a little bit more wary of each other. But they're ultimately guys who are going to come forward. So if you have to come forward against a puncher, there's one way you can do it. You can simply take out the puncher before the puncher's power becomes a factor. That's one way you can do it. And I think that is what either guy might be going for. If I'm Artur Beterbiev, I'll just do what I normally do, and I'll keep my defense tight, keep my hands tight, because Joe Smith has got one hell of a left hook. He's got a right hand as well. But gradually, by breakdown, Joe Smith, you use feints and step away with angles, even though he's not a guy that's on his bicycle. And for Joe Smith Jr., I don't think Beterbiev has faced a guy with quite the same power as Joe Smith. So he's got the power thing going for him. He's got the height, he's got the reach, and he's younger. He's 32. Beterbiev is 37. I would try and see what happens if he nails Beterbiev a couple of times, and I think Joe Smith will be able to do that. And then we'll see just how strong Beterbiev's chin is, because he has been down for flash knockdowns. It's more off-balance kind of things when he's on the attack rather than seriously hurt. But I can see, especially early, Beterbiev knocking Joe Smith Jr. knocking down Beterbiev. And the other question mark is, can Joe Smith Jr. take what Beterbiev dishes out? Now, at the end of the day, if we just look at their pedigrees, Beterbiev is older, he is the shorter man, he has a reach disadvantage. Those things are things that Joe Smith can use to his advantage, along with the fact that Beterbiev isn't a slick moving boxing guy like Bivol or even Barrera. You know, he's going to be there to fight. It's just a question of is Joe Smith Jr. going to be able to take what Beterbiev dishes out, because he's a little bit like Gennady Golovkin in his prime. He is very heavy-handed, and you can't take those shots for 12 rounds. If you look at the people who went long rounds with Beterbiev, guys like Enrico Curling, not really something special. We know him here in South Africa for his fights with Reino Liebenberg, but Curling took him quite deep into the fight, and that was a guy that boxed and moved. So I would say for Joe Smith, he's not going to box and move, but be clever with his aggression. He's got to use that long jab of his. He's got to jab his way in and hit Beterbiev with something to disrupt his rhythm. If Joe Smith Jr. can move Artur Beterbiev back, I think we're in for a very interesting night, because I'm not so sure that Beterbiev will be able to box on the back foot. I've never seen somebody back him up, and I'll be honest, see if Joe Smith Jr. can do it. And the same, the other way around, if Beterbiev backs Joe Smith up all the time, I don't think Joe Smith boxes well there. So Smith he's an okay counter puncher. He can look for the counters on the back foot. But in the end of the day, it's a fight between big punchers. I'd be very surprised if it becomes a chess match. Could be if they're wary of each other's power, but I will be surprised. I don't think it's their mentality. So I think they're going to go for each other, and I think it's going to be a bloody brawl at times. And I think Beterbiev might hit the canvas for a flash knockdown, but in the end, I think he's just overall, he just has more than Joe Smith has. So unless he gets old on the night, and I don't think that's the case because he hasn't been through too many wars, I think it's an old cliche in boxing, there is levels. And I think Joe Smith Jr. has kind of maxed out his level. He's hit his ceiling. I mean, winning a world title, holding a world title belt, I think that's already a little bit stretching it. That's as far as Joe Smith Jr. was going to go. He's done very well for himself in his career. Broke through against Fonfara, that win over Hopkins, the win over Alvarez. He's a bit of an overachiever for me, and his power has served him in good stead. And I just kind of feel Joe Smith Jr. is at this level now, where he's hit a ceiling, whereas Beterbiev, I think, belongs among the elite of the light heavyweights, you know, beating guys like Vostik in the unification and Marcus Brown. I'm not quite sure that Joe Smith Jr. can beat a Vostik or Marcus Brown. I'm not at all convinced that he will beat them. So I just think it's a question of levels. Artur Beterbiev being an elite level fighter, and Joe Smith Jr. just being a very good world-class fighter. There's just that level difference, and that's why I have to go for Artur Beterbiev. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. You can't count Joe Smith out. He might make us all eat crow if he catches Beterbiev and he manages to hurt him enough to get him out of it. But I just have to go with a chalk. Beterbiev is a more accomplished fighter. He's a more he's just performed better when he's at the highest level than Joe Smith Jr. has. So I think he'll have some adversity, there will be some blood spilled, but I think Artur Beterbiev is going to eventually, the accumulation of his punches is going to stop Joe Smith somewhere between rounds 9 and 11. I think the corner might pull Joe Smith Jr. out, or it might be a referee stoppage, depending how good Joe Smith's chin is, and I think he has got a pretty good chin. But that's what I think. I think it's going to be a very exciting fight. I can't wait for this. And I think Artur Beterbiev will have his hand raised in the end in a very good fight at Madison Square Garden. And let's hope we can see him then eventually against Bivol for all the marbles at light heavyweight. I'd much rather see that than a Canelo Bivol rematch for that matter. So let's hope it's a good fight. I'm sure it's going to be a good fight. Guys, if you've watched this far, please give the channel a like and a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And until we see each other again, please remember to keep those hands up.